Thanks, Rob. Thank you, everybody. Pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. And this is obviously the bigger session, so growth is much better than retirement and certainly just maintaining the business. So always promising signs. So just by a little bit of a background, I'm the CEO of Total Synergy, which you may have seen us up on the upstairs section. We do a software platform for architects and engineers, essentially to do project delivery, project accounting, so really running your business. Speaking today really is I'm not really talking about the product at all, but I want to talk about planning. We've been doing this for about 20 years. Prior to that, I was in chartered accounting. Don't hold that against me, but certainly what I'd like to do is share some of our insights on what we've seen in the industry over that last 20 years. Our first client, I just thought I'd also mention, was a structural engineering company based in Sydney, who was also a member of this institute, I think probably for about the last 40 or 45 years, and certainly raved about the Institute of Structural Engineers in the UK. So it's nice for me to actually go back and say I've been here and spoken here, so that'll be terrific. Okay, so just wanted to talk about growth, and there's a few elements I thought I'd bring up, and the first one is really that growth is not just simply more projects, more fees, more staff, more profits. So when we consider what business growth is, we need to have a look at the inherent look at a need for a strategy and a way to build your business. And that really means planning for growth, not just executing growth. You need to invest in things like infrastructure. So taking into account things like your premises, your IT, all your systems throughout the business. So I don't just mean software systems. You need to look at the support team that your growing business will require. So that obviously means non-billable resources, support team. So making sure then that the right people in your company are doing the right job. That's the real necessity of having a support team as you grow. And of course, management systems, and I'll talk a little bit about that later on. So really, investment in growth usually always precedes the cash return or the cash generated by that increased activity. One of the things you'll notice in this graph is that as you look through growth in a linear fashion, you can see it being quite steady, but when it's actually executed, you see there's peaks and troughs. So a lot of people will find in a growth scenario that when they get to a certain stage, they need to invest. They need to perhaps expand premises, or they need to invest in more high caliber systems. And that may often mean that I have to re-engineer my business, recalibrate our expectations, and I might even see a dip, if not a flat lining, as I go through those stages. So in this particular graphic, you'll see that there are stages along the curve that roughly equates to a size of the company that reflects that you need to invest. And you may even see a drop-off in revenue when you go through that, as you have to take billable team or management away from the project work. So don't expect that it's going to be straight line, and certainly there is that need to invest before you execute growth. And you probably all felt that, for those in the room who have gone through these growth stages, that necessity. So the other thing is talking about how big is big enough for you. So naturally this is the small practitioners conference, and some of you might be very happy being small. Some of you might have aspirations of being much, much larger than you are. So the first thing you really need to come to terms with is that appetite for being larger than you are. And so there is always that natural size for certain people. I've spoken to different size engineering firms in the room, but do you have that appetite for being bigger than you are today? So naturally you'll have to be more agile. You'd also have to be more exposed to market fluctuations and risk. So as I mentioned in a session a little bit earlier today, for those of us who started the business from scratch, you can remember those early days. I think we all went through it, where you were taking on your first, second, third staff members and you didn't get paid some months because they got paid ahead of you. And that feels like it's a reverse hierarchy, doesn't it? When these guys who work for you are getting paid over the top of you. And I certainly experienced it when I started Total Synergy, that there were months, as soon as I hired staff, I had this obligation to meet payroll, and that meant I wasn't getting paid some months. So it's not all smooth sailing, is it? The other thing is, do you have capability to grow? And in all businesses, and certainly in professional services businesses, I sort of look at the way these skills arise, and every successful firm has what I call a rainmaker behind it. The person who can drive on new business, the person who holds the charisma, and the front and centre eye line or eyesight of the clients. And generally they're perhaps the name partners in the group or the founders. But even in a larger firm, you'll see a big difference between principals of a firm and rainmakers in a firm. And so you've got to have that ability to make it rain. But there's also that need to have people who operationally execute the projects, and also the people that can do things like HR, finance, IT and so on. So you've got to have the skills to match the ability to grow. And so having that capability is certainly going to be key to your success in growing your business. Next point was, are you managing your practice, or does your practice manage you? And what I mean by that is, how do you feel now about your business? Do you find you're hitting a brick wall? Do you find that you're feeling out of control, that perhaps you're doing excessive hours and that you don't have any work-life balance? Or perhaps do you feel like you're chasing the business and it's running away from you rather than leading it forward? And so it's a real feeling in growth of, am I prepared, and do I have that ability to take it forward without a huge amount of chaos? And some of the things I also see in a growing business, and these are, again, reflections on what we hear from our clients and prospects around the world, which is a few common pitfalls and how that reflects in your ability and capability to move forward. So the first one is a common pitfall that, my business runs on great design, that it's the design that I hold my head up over, and that's the most important thing of what I achieve each day. And that really puts together that question over, is your reputation and brand more important than billing and profits? And it's always a difficult concept that, is it the purpose of my job to make a profit, or is my personal job to come out with great design? And I suppose it needs to come back to, what are you trying to achieve? Certainly, it's no good being in a business where you can't pay wages. It's no good being in a situation where you can't invest in your growth and you can't, weather the peaks and troughs. So certainly profit is important, if not for anything else than to buffer your business against changes. So I wanted to bring that up. It's always still about cash flow and staff, so you need to make sure that's covered. The second part is, and I want to talk about this from a technology or an IT point of view, we've got to keep everything on our files in the server. We can't move to cloud and so on. And I just wanted to sort of mention that progress is important in a business, and technological progress is all around us. And moving to the cloud is kind of inevitable. I don't know if you all subscribe to that yet, but moving to the cloud is inevitable from many aspects, and that is, first and foremost, that cloud-based systems are inherently more secure than what you're doing on your own premise. So whether it's intrusion detection and firewall security type security, whether it's data recovery, data redundancy, disaster recovery, backups, in the cloud it's all managed for you. And taking that whole process away in your application software environment so that you don't have to worry about IT is a key part of growing. As a company, we obviously sort of believe and execute this strategy. So in growing my business to be in now 2 countries, in both Australia and in the UK, we've moved 100% to cloud everything. And that's everything from our accounting systems, our marketing systems, HR, file management, and it makes me, I guess I have firstly a huge peace of mind that wherever I go in the world I have everything at my fingertips, but secondly that I have pure confidence in my suppliers and my providers that they will not lose my data. But keeping the files on premise is unfortunately, until we get faster broadband these days, is generally what people are subscribing to. And whether it's a hybrid model where you're keeping some files in the cloud and some on premise, or just archiving your projects to the cloud at the end of the job, they're safer up in the cloud. And so you need to start looking at IT strategies down the track. We don't need to budget our jobs. We don't need to track its progress. The fees, whether you fixed price or percentage of construction value, whether you're doing hourly charge type jobs, it's all still recovering professional services charges. So fixed fees always are based on the effort expended on the job. But the successful firms don't just pin their fees to an hourly rate. They don't just simply say it's 30 hours at £200 an hour. They look at value-based fees, and that gives them some ability to create higher value projects. It also gives them some value in demonstrating their expertise. It might be all sorts of things, such as timeliness of projects, that helps you deliver a higher level of fees. But staff still need to deliver to a target, and you only have to look at firms who don't have a budget, and their staff will simply try to deliver projects to the value of the fee as opposed to the estimated work on the project. So the margin gets eroded if you don't give them something to shoot for. And so that's why we budget, and that's why we need to track our actuals against the budget to make sure our team know what's expected of them on an ongoing basis. The other thing to look at is the capacity side. So as you grow, in particular, you need to know both that you have enough staff to do the work that you're forecasting and that you have enough work for the staff you have on hand. So unless you can estimate how much work is coming up, unless you can forecast and see how that's panning out with win-loss ratios and with expected billings, then you've got a real issue with how you're going to plan headcount for the future. And that really comes back to being better business managers as you go forward. So estimating that work is important. It also will help you highlight issues and errors. In every firm we go into, people put their time against wrong projects. People might have variations that are sitting inside a fixed fee that never get billed because nobody picks it up. So unless you are managing, measuring it, you can't manage it. And I don't set my rates. The market tells me what I charge. And one of the things I raise here is that when I look at what engineers charge as hourly rates, and I compare it often against the accountants and the lawyers and the other professional services industries, I see a profession that is highly educated and highly technical, but just not confident enough to charge the fees that you deserve. And that really comes back to understanding how your fees are put together and having the confidence that your fees should be higher, not lower. So understanding your rates, understanding your costs becomes a very important part to that. Also taking into account your expertise. Are you an expert in a particular field? Do you have a portfolio of projects in a sector that adds to the value that you provide and the timeliness of responses and so on? Do you provide innovative design? Can you work in a mode that delivers a project faster? So is there a way you can demonstrate, and it could be using things like joint ventures with other firms, maybe in other regions, where you can actually say, I'm going to pass the project on to the night team, like a night shift, and actually deliver project design faster. All those sorts of things allow you to charge a higher fee, but also being clear on your scope. clear on the variations, and making sure that at every change, at every point in the road where you're being asked to do something outside the scope, you identify that with the client, communicate that it's an extra, and then of course it's still a commercial decision from you whether you will bill that or not, but at least making sure you're getting the value perception from your clients for doing something that's a little bit beyond the scope of work. I can't afford to spend more on technology. So, many of the guys in the room here were doing this a couple of decades ago when there was probably a ratio of 4 draftsmen to an engineer. And, through CAD and BIM, we've sort of seen that drop down to a 1-to-1 or an under 1-to-1 process these days. And the same with things like office and accounting systems, where word processing and accounting systems has completely changed the level of overhead that you need to run a business. But what about the management systems in your business? Are you investing in CRM? And I don't just mean Salesforce type package there, but are you investing in systems that help you manage the work that you've done with different clients? Have they been successful? What sort of win or hit rate are you getting with those customers? What's their payment terms been like? Am I forecasting my work diligently to say we've got a trough coming up or we've got a peak trough coming up? We all know recruitment is a good 60-day minimum process by the time you choose to hire to the time you get your ads out, you get your networks happening, you get your social media happening. By the time you interview and recruit, you're talking a minimum of 60 days. So are you tracking where your peaks and troughs are? And I dare say outplacement of staff is a very similar exercise where you, these days, if you were in Sarah's position before, you've got to manage terminations, and it's not a simple case of saying fire at will. And project information management, collaboration platforms, all these types of systems are designed to enable you to be more effective and efficient. And if you're like me, I'd love to grow my business 2 or 3-fold, but if I could do that without any more staff, that would be really good. So that's why I invest in systems. It's just simply to say I don't need as many headcount to achieve more. And mobility, I just want to raise that as well, because as employers, you're working with the Gen Y and soon to be Gen Zs, and these people are expecting mobility and flexibility and work-life balance. They're going to look at your firms and they're literally going to say, I need to be on site more, I need to be face-to-face, I need to be at home to pick up the kids, I need to be working on the tube, I need, and you need to provide, because that will reflect on your business down the track. Are you a flexible, technologically advanced and futurist type company, or are you dragging your feet? And mobility is probably one of the greatest things people are asking for today. Do I do projects through the different sectors of the community? Do I do overseas work? How mobile can I be? How flexible can I be? And of course, how do we know if we're making the right decisions? So, it's more and more difficult to manage business in a time of fluctuation. We've all been through a pretty horrendous recession. But how do you know in a real-time decision-making situation whether this project should be a go or no-go? How do I do my risk assessments? Do I have HR and performance metrics that I can call on when somebody asks me for a pay rise? Do I have any visibility of my backlogs and my business development work? And essentially, do I know where my deadlines and my criticality of issues is based as a business and across my business? And cash flow and finance. So have I got a cash burn that's way ahead of what we can suffer? So are we stuck in that sort of hamster wheel environment where we're just doing, or are we creating a system that sort of alleviates the chaos? And I just wanted to also mention brand. So going back to what I was saying before, is it profit or is it reputation? And I want to talk about brand as part of your growth strategy. And brand is the single thing that your competitors can't touch. They can't copy it. They can't fake it. And so when we talk about brand, what are we talking about? Well, these sorts of points of difference might reflect on your brand as your business. So, for example, things like our employees set us apart. They're better than the firm's employees. Is that true? What do you base that on? We're trusted advisors to our clients. We provide a service to them. We're partners. We strive for excellence. So what does these sorts of things even mean? We have a hygiene factor in it, but is it true? Are we being design-led? Is design-led or design excellence our real differentiator out there? And so when we look at brand and growing the business, we need to look at 3 areas that you guys, if you want to grow your business, need to pay attention to. And that really is the core values of your business, the attributes that reflect that, and then the benefits that your clients will see. So what I mean by core values, and these are things you probably see in things like value statements or mission statements in each firm, is really who are you? What's your purpose? How do you do things? What do you stand for? And why would people want to work for you? Because we all know staffing is probably the biggest impediment to the growth. The attributes. So what do you do? What technology do you have? What industry specialisations do you have? Where is your uniqueness? And then do you partner with others? Do you specialise in a niche? And even physically, when I say physically, it could be your office, it could be your marketing. So all those things make brand to you and they reflect back on your business. If you're growing, you need to look like you're growing. And lastly, for the benefits for your clients, they will make a value judgment based on that. They'll feel comfortable with you. They'll see whether you're an innovative company. They will look at how is your efficiency? What type of work will I be doing if I work for your company? And what is your unique knowledge that will further my career or further my business? So brand becomes a very integral part to being able to grow. So sort of things you could do to differentiate your business from the ones around you is specialisation. Do we want to become the go-to person for a segment, for a portfolio of work? Do we want to use technology that interacts with our customers? So giving them part of the experience that will actually change their perception of you. So obviously things like BIM and using 3D visualizations, and we're talking about augmented reality and so on these days, HoloLens, all those things change the experience, change your brand, change your reputation. Communicating online, social media, looking at collaborative platforms where you're actually sharing design ideas and interacting in a real-time environment. Those things reflect back on how you deliver projects. As an employer brand, when you're looking to compete against the WSPs of the world, what are you going to offer that's different? Are you boutique? What can you be different to working at one of the larger firms? Is it technology? Is it work-life balance? What type of benefits do you provide? And partnerships. Do you work with other firms around the world? Do you work, with mainland Europe? Do you give, obviously, lifestyle type opportunities? And how does that change the culture of your business to get the best out of your people? So really, brand is about creating value in the minds of the marketplace. It stops eroding all your margins. You will win more on word of mouth. You will win more repeat business from your clients. And people will start recognising who you were because of the experience you provide. And of course, providing a platform to recruit. So a little bit like marketing to get staff, you also market to clients, but marketing to staff is important. How do I actually give an environment that shows they want to work there and they want to stay there? So just in summary, for growth cannot happen without chaos and errors unless you start planning and investing for it. Growth isn't for the faint-hearted. You really want to know what you're getting yourself into. So it is a commercial decision, it is a personal decision Do I want to hire that first employee, or do I want to work from home? It's pretty easy with no overheads to make a profit. I may not win the biggest jobs, but I certainly could even sub-consult on some of the biggest jobs to the bigger firms. So there is a way still to make a pretty adequate living and not grow, and that's something you also need to consider. Growth needs to reflect the changing names of information, the data that you have, the way you process it, the decisions you make. And success is really defined by being clear, effective, efficient and informed. And I think that personally is how we've struggled and re-established ourselves in growth. And there we are. Thanks, guys.